Señores, ministros de la Corte.
Hello everyone, distinguished ministers, governors, national deputies and senators, presidents and foreign dignitaries, Argentines. Today a new era begins in Argentina. Today we end a long and sad history of decadence and decline and begin the road to rebuilding our country. Argentinians have expressed resoundingly a will for change that has no return. There is no going back. Today we bury decades of failure, infighting and senseless struggles. Struggles that only succeeded in destroying our beloved country and leaving us in ruins. Today, a new era begins in Argentina, an era of peace and prosperity, an era of growth and development, an era of freedom and progress. 200 years ago, a group of Argentine citizens gathered and told the world that the united provinces of the Rio de la Plata were no longer a Spanish colony and that from that historic moment on, we would be a free and sovereign nation. For decades, we had internal disputes about what institutional form our country needed. In 1853, after 40 years of declaring independence under the auspices of a small group of young idealists known today as the Generation of 37, we decided as a people to embrace the ideas of liberty. Thus, a liberal constitution was sanctioned to guarantee the benefits of freedom to us, to our prosperity, and to all the people of the world who wish to inhabit Argentine soil. What followed the adoption of that constitution with its strong liberal roots was the most impressive economic expansion in our history. From a country of barbarians engaged in a total war, we became the world's leading power in the early 20th century. We were at the beacon of the West. Our shores welcomed with open arms millions of immigrants fleeing a ravaged Europe in search of a horizon of progress. Unfortunately, our leadership decided to abandon the model that had made us rich and embrace their impoverishing ideas of collectivism. For more than 100 years, politicians have insisted on defending a model that only produces poverty, stagnation, and misery. A model that assumes that citizens exist to serve politics, not that politics exist to serve citizens. A model that considers the task of a politician to be to direct the lives of individuals in all possible spheres and areas. A model that considers the state as a spoil of war to be shared among friends. Ladies and gentlemen, this model has failed. It has failed all over the world, but it has failed especially in our country. Just as the fall of the Berlin Wall marked the end of a tragic era for the world, these elections have marked a turning point in our history. Much has been said these days about the inheritance we are to receive. Let me be very clear about this. No government has received a worse inheritance than the one we are receiving. In its beginnings, Kirchnerism boasted of having two surpluses, that is, fiscal and external surpluses. Today, it leaves us with twin deficits of 17 points of GDP. In turn, 15 of these 17 GDP points correspond to the consolidated deficit between the Treasury and the central bank. Therefore, there is no viable solution that avoids attacking the budget deficit. At the same time, of these 15 points of fiscal deficit, 5 correspond to the National Treasury and 10 to the central bank. Therefore, the solution implies on the one hand a fiscal adjustment in the national public sector of 5 points of GDP, which unlike in the past will fall most entirely on the state and not on the private sector. On the other hand, it is necessary to eliminate the central bank's interest-bearing liabilities, which are responsible for the 10 points of the central bank's deficit. This would put an end to money issuance and thus to the only empirically true and theoretically valid cause of inflation. However, given that monetary policy acts with a lag of 18 to 24 months, even if we stop issuing money today, we will continue to pay the cost of the outgoing government's monetary mess. Spending 20 points of GDP as the outgoing government did is not free. We will pay for it in inflation. At the same time, foreign exchange restrictions, another legacy of this government. At the same time, the foreign exchange restrictions, another legacy of this government, not only constitute a social and productive nightmare because they imply high interest rates, low levels of activity, low levels of formal employment, and miserable real wages that drive the increase of the destitute poor, but also the surplus of money in the economy today is double what it was before the Rodriguez. To have an idea of what this means, let us remember that the Rodriguez multiplied the inflation rate by 6 times, so a similar event would mean multiplying the inflation rate by 12 times. And given that it has been travelling at a rate of 300%, we could move to an annual rate of 3,600. At the same time, be calm, it doesn't end there. The inheritance continues. At the same time, given the situation of the central bank's interest-bearing liabilities, which are lower than before hyperinflation, the money supply could quadruple in a very short time, bringing inflation to levels of 15,000 per year. This is the legacy they are leaving us, an inflation rate of 15,000 per year, which we will fight tooth and nail to eradicate. Moreover, this number, which seems crazy, I want you to know that implies an inflation rate of 52% per month, while today, according to private estimates, it travels at a rate that varies between 20 and 40% per month for the months between December and February. The outgoing government left us with hyperinflation, and it is our top priority to make every effort to avoid such a catastrophe that would lead to poverty of over 90% and indigency of over 50%. Therefore, there is no alternative to adjustment. On the other hand, the legacy does not end there, since the tariff imbalances are comparable to the disaster left by Kirchnerism in 2015. In the exchange rate, the gap is between 150% and 200%, levels similar to those of the Rodriguez-o. At the same time, the debt of importers exceeds US $30 billion, and the retained earnings of foreign companies amount to US $10 billion. The debt of the central bank and YPF is US $25 billion, and the outstanding debt of the Treasury is another US $35 billion. In terms of debt, this means that the debt pump has reached US $100 billion, which must be added to the existing debt of almost US $420 billion. On top of these problems, of course, are this year's debt maturities, which amount to US $90 billion in pesos and US $25 billion in foreign currencies with multilateral credit organizations.
Y 25.000 millones de dólares en moneda extranjera con organismos multilaterales de crédito. Sin embargo,
however, with the financial markets closed and the IMF agreement in tatters due to the outgoing government's brutal defaults, the debt rollover is a challenge even for the mythical Cyclops. As if all this were not enough, this is happening in an economy that has not grown since 2011. In line with what has already been said, formal employment in the private sector remains stagnant at 6 million jobs, reaching the madness that it has been surpassed by 33% by informal employment. Therefore, it should not surprise anyone that real salaries have been destroyed, which are around $300 a month, not only 6 times lower than those of the convertibility period. But if the trend of those years had been maintained, or as they used to say, the damned neoliberalism, today they would have oscillated between $3,000 and $3,500 a month. They have ruined our lives. They have reduced our salaries by a factor of 10. Therefore, we should not be surprised that populism leaves us 45% poor and 10% destitute. After such a situation, which seems to be irreversible, it should be clear that there is no possible alternative to adaptation. Nor is there any room for debate between shock and gradualism. First, because from an empirical point of view, all gradualist programs have ended badly, while all shock programs except the 1959 program have been successful. Second, because from a theoretical point of view, when a country lacks reputation, as is unfortunately the case in Argentina, businessmen will not invest until they see that the fiscal adjustment will make it recessionary.
En tercer lugar, y no por ello menos importante,
Third, and no less important, gradualism requires financing, and unfortunately, I have to tell you again, there is no money.
tengo que decírselos de nuevo, no hay plata. Por ende, la conclusión.
Therefore, the conclusion is that there is no alternative to adjustment and no alternative to shock. Of course, this will hurt the level of activity, employment, real wages, on the number of poor and destitute people. There will be stagflation, it is true, but it will not be very different from what has happened in the last 12 years. Let us remember that in the last 12 years, GDP per capita has fallen by 15% in a context where we have accumulated inflation of 5,000%. So we have been living in stagflation for more than a decade. Therefore, this is the last straw to begin the reconstruction of Argentina. At the same time, after the macro adjustment that we're about to make, which will be less painful the more country risk goes down, and the better our containment from the Ministry of Human Capital, the better the situation will begin to improve. So there will be light at the end of the road.
Esto es, habrá luz al final del camino. En el caso alternativo,
in the alternative case, the sensible approach was progressive, whose only source of financing is the issuance of money that will weaken in a hyperinflation that will lead the country to the worst crisis in its history, added to the fact that they will put us in a decadent spiral that will equate us with the darkness of Chavez and Maduro's Venezuela. Therefore, after such a situation, there can be no doubt that the only possible option is adjustment, an orderly adjustment that falls with all its force on the state and not on the private sector.
Sabemos que será duro. Por eso
we know that it will be difficult, and that is why I would like to share with you a quote from one of the best presidents in Argentine history, Julio Argentino Roca.
Mejores presidentes de la historia argentina, que fue Julio Argentino Roca. Nada grande, nada estable y duradero.
Nothing great, nothing stable and lasting is conquered in the world when it comes to the freedom of men and the gratitude of peoples, unless it is at the cost of supreme efforts and painful sacrifices. But our challenges do not stop at the economic level. The level of deterioration in our country is such that it affects all areas of community life.
Que abarca todas las esferas de la vida en comunidad. En materia de seguridad,
in terms of security, Argentina has become a bloodbath. Criminals walk free while good Argentines are locked behind bars. Drug trafficking has slowly taken over our streets to the point that one of the most important cities in our country has been taken over by narcotics and violence. Our security forces have been humiliated and abused for decades, abandoned by a political class that has turned its back on those who watch over us. The reality is such that only 3% of crimes are convicted. No more prosecution for criminals. On the social front, we have a country where half of the population is poor with a completely torn social fabric. More than 20 million Argentinians cannot live in dignity because they are prisoners of a system that only generates more poverty. As a great economist says, anti-poverty plans generate more poverty. The only way out of poverty is more freedom.
To
give you an idea of the deterioration we're going through, only 16% of our children finish school on time and in the right way. Only 16%. Only 16 out of 100. That means that 84% of our children do not finish school on time and in the right way. In turn, 70% of children who finish school cannot solve a basic math problem or understand a text. In fact, in the most recent PISA evaluations, Argentina ranked 66th out of 81 countries and 7th in Latin America. Argentina was the first country in the world to eliminate illiteracy. If only Sarmiento could see what they're doing with education. In healthcare, the system has completely collapsed. Hospitals are destroyed, doctors are paid a pittance, and Argentines have no access to basic healthcare. So much so that during the pandemic, if Argentina had done what the average country in the world did, we would have had 30,000 deaths. But thanks to the negligence and inefficiency of the state, 130,000 Argentines lost their lives.
This is the
current situation that politicians talk so much about. This is the argument they use to justify the huge increase in public spending, which only benefits them. In all areas, wherever you look, the situation in Argentina is one of emergency. If we look at the infrastructure of our country, the situation is the same. Only 16% of our roads are paved and only 11% are in good condition. It is no accident that about 15,000 Argentines die in traffic accidents every year. What I am saying is that the situation in Argentina is critical and urgent. We have no alternatives and no time. We have no room for sterile discussions. Our country demands action and immediate action. The political class is leaving a country on the brink of the deepest crisis in its history. Each of them will have to take their responsibility. It is not my job to point them out. We neither seek nor desire the difficult decisions that must be made in the coming weeks, but unfortunately, we have no choice. However, our commitment to the Argentine people is unwavering. We will make all the necessary decisions to solve the problem caused by 100 years of profligacy of the political class. Even if it is difficult at first, we know that the situation will get worse in the short term. But then we will see the fruits of our efforts, having laid the foundations for solid and sustainable growth over time. We also know that all is not lost. The challenges we face are enormous, but so is our ability to overcome them. It will not be easy. 100 years of failure will not be undone in one day. But one day there is a beginning, and today is that day.
Hoy empezamos a desandar el camino de la decadencia.
Today we are beginning to leave the path of decadence and we are beginning to walk the path of prosperity. We have everything to be the country we have always dreamed of being. We have the resources, we have the people, we have the creativity, and most importantly, we have the resilience to move forward. Today we will return to embrace the ideas of freedom, those ideas that are summarized in the definition of liberalism by our greatest hero of the ideas of freedom.
El profesor Alberto Fernandez Lynch, hijo, que dice, el liberalismo.
Liberalism is the full respect for the life project of others, based on the principle of non-aggression in defense of the right to life, liberty and property. Whose basic institutions are private property, markets free of government intervention, free competition, division of labour and social cooperation.
La división del trabajo y la cooperación social. En esa frase,
this 57-word sentence sums up the essence of the new social contract chosen by the Argentine people.
Que eligieron los argentinos. Este nuevo contrato social.
This new social contract proposes a different country. A country where the state does not run our lives but watches over our rights. A country where those who harm us pay.
En el que las hace, las paga. Un país.
A country in which those who do evil and violate the rights of their fellow citizens do not receive the support of society. In our terms, those who do evil do not get paid.
El que corta no cobra. Un país.
A country that allows everything within the law but nothing outside the law.
No permite nada.
A country that supports those who need it but does not allow itself to be blackmailed by those who use those who have the least to enrich themselves. As far as the Argentine political class is concerned, I would like to tell them that we are not here to persecute anyone. We're not here to settle old scores or to discuss power spaces. Our project is not a debt payment project. Our project is a country project. We do not ask for blind support, but we will not tolerate hypocrisy, dishonesty, or ambition for power to interfere with the change that Argentines have chosen. We welcome with open arms all political, labour and business leaders who want to be part of the new Argentina.
Los recibimos con los brazos abiertos. Así,
so no matter where they come from, no matter what they have done before, the only thing that matters is where they want to go. To those who would use violence or blackmail to bring about that change, we say that they will find a president of unwavering conviction who will use all the levers of the state to bring about the change our country needs. We will not give up, we will not back down, we will not surrender. We will move forward with the changes this country needs because we are certain that embracing the ideas of freedom is the only way to get out of the hole they have put us in. Therefore, and in conclusion, let it be clear, today a new era begins in Argentina.
El desafío que tenemos por delante
The challenge before us is titanic, but the true strength of a people is measured by how they face challenges when they arise. And every time we think that our capacity to meet those challenges has been reached, we look to the sky and remember that capacity may well be unlimited. The challenge is enormous, but we will face it with conviction. We will work tirelessly, and we will achieve our goal. It is no coincidence that this presidential inauguration takes place during the holiday of Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights, for it celebrates the true essence of freedom. The Maccabean War is the symbol of the triumph of the weak over the mighty, of the few over the many, of light over darkness, and above all, of truth over lies. For you know that I would rather tell you an uncomfortable truth than a comfortable lie.
Estoy convencido.
I am convinced that we will come out on top. I remember that 2 years ago we entered this house as deputies, together with Villarreal, who is now the Vice President of the nation.
Hoy vicepresidente de la Nación. Ingresamos a esta casa como diputados.
I remember being told in an interview that if there are 2 of you out of 257, you won't get anything done.
No van a poder hacer nada. Y también recuerdo que ese día.
I also remember that day. The answer was a quote from Maccabees 3:19, which says that victory in battles does not depend on the number of soldiers, but on the power that comes from heaven.
Sino de las fuerzas que viene del cielo. Por lo tanto,
so God bless the Argentines, and may the powers of heaven be with us in this challenge. Thank you very much. It will be difficult, but we will do it. Long live freedom, damn it. Long live freedom, damn it. Long live freedom, damn it. Let us take our hands back. We will succeed.